I'll fall to pieces if I don't find something else to do. This sadness never ceases. Woman, still in love with you. My head keeps on reeling. It's got me in a crazy spell. Oh, darling, 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 darling. Is this the end? I'm still in love with you. You know, there's people out there who say time has a way of healing, and it can dry all the tears from your eyes. Oh, but darling, it's this empty feeling, and I cannot disguise it. After all that we've been through, me and you, I try my best, but it's no use. But I will always keep on loving you. Is this the end? I'm still in love. something I think you should know. Hey, maybe, baby, you might think it over. Just one more time before you go. Anything I could do for you. Oh, me baby, help me see it through. I'm still in